A doctor humiliates a black patient, but he was the new owner of the hospital. What happens next is breathtaking. Have you ever imagined being publicly humiliated only to discover that you have the power to change everything? That's exactly what's about to happen in this story that will leave you speechless. New York City, 2025. Dr. Richard Thompson, a renowned 45-year-old plastic surgeon, strode through the corridors of St. Elizabeth's Hospital as if he owned the place. His pristine white coat contrasted sharply with his arrogance, which seemed to grow with each passing day. With assured steps and chin held high, he ignored the worried glances of nurses and the uneasy expressions of patients he passed. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was known for catering to New York's elite, a symbol of status and medical excellence. Dr. Thompson prided himself on being one of the hospital's stars, but his reputation extended beyond his surgical skills. His cutting remarks and discriminatory attitudes were as well known as his dexterity with a scalpel. On this sunny Wednesday morning, the hospital's icy air conditioning contrasted with the stifling heat outside. The main lobby buzzed with the typical bustle of a busy day. It was in this setting that Marcus Johnson, a 38-year-old black entrepreneur, entered the hospital with severe chest pain. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Comment below which city you're watching this incredible story from. Marcus, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, approached the reception desk with difficulty. His face was contorted in pain, and he could barely speak. The receptionist, concerned, quickly began filling out the admission form. It was at this moment that Dr. Thompson, passing through the lobby on his way to his next consultation, stopped abruptly. His eyes fixed on Marcus, and a contemptuous smile formed on his lips. With slow, deliberate steps, he approached the counter. This kind of people should go to the public clinic, not an elite hospital like ours, Dr. Thompson said loudly, his tone dripping with disdain. We don't have time to deal with cases that are clearly not urgent, and probably can't even pay for care. The silence that followed was deafening. Employees exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some patients in the waiting area shifted uneasily in their chairs. The receptionist, her face red with shame, lowered her eyes to the form she was filling out. Marcus, still doubled over in pain, slowly raised his eyes to stare at the doctor. His gaze, despite the physical pain he was feeling, conveyed a mixture of disbelief and determination. For a brief moment, his eyes met Dr. Thompson's, and something in that look made the doctor hesitate for a second, but Dr. Thompson quickly regained his arrogant posture. With one last contemptuous glance, he turned and began to walk away, satisfied with his display of superiority. His steps echoed in the silent lobby, as if to mark the end of this unpleasant incident. It was then that a young nurse, Sarah, quickly approached Marcus. Kindly, she guided him to a nearby chair, completely ignoring Dr. Thompson's words. "Sir, please sit here. I'll call a doctor to examine you right away," she said, her voice low but firm. As Sarah walked away to get help, Marcus's eyes scanned the lobby. His gaze paused for a moment on the large mural on the wall, which showed the history of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, a history of innovation, excellence, and exclusion. What Dr. Thompson and everyone else didn't know was that Marcus was not just an ordinary patient. He was much more than he appeared. His presence in this hospital that morning was no coincidence, and the consequences of this encounter would be far deeper than anyone could imagine. But what was Marcus really doing here? What was the true reason for his visit to St. Elizabeth's Hospital? And how would this public humiliation turn into a lesson Dr. Thompson would never forget? The story was just beginning, and the twists to come would forever change the fate of everyone in this hospital. St. Elizabeth's Hospital, an imposing glass and steel edifice in the heart of Manhattan, was more than just a medical institution. It was a status symbol, a bastion of New York's elite that had been serving the city's wealthiest for decades. Its gleaming corridors and cutting-edge equipment stood in stark contrast to the reality of the public healthcare system. Dr. Richard Thompson, son of a traditional medical family, had grown up believing his place was at the top. A graduate of Ivy League schools, he had quickly become one of the most sought-after plastic surgeons in the country. His skill with a scalpel was undeniable, but his arrogance and prejudices had grown alongside his fame. To him, the hospital was his kingdom, and patients like Marcus were mere intruders. Marcus Johnson, on the other hand, came from an entirely different background. Born in a disadvantaged neighborhood in Brooklyn, he had overcome countless obstacles to become a successful entrepreneur. His technology company, focused on healthcare solutions, was revolutionizing the market. But Marcus had never forgotten his roots or the challenges he had faced as a black man in a predominantly white business world. Nurse Sarah, a young woman of 28 fresh out of nursing school, represented a new generation of healthcare professionals. Idealistic and compassionate, she often found herself in conflict with the elitist attitudes of some older doctors. Her empathy towards Marcus was not only professional but also personal. She knew well the taste of discrimination. That morning, the encounter between these three very different personalities in the lobby of St. Elizabeth's Hospital was not a coincidence. Marcus had carefully planned his visit, although the chest pain was not part of the initial plan. Over the past few weeks, he had secretly negotiated the purchase of the hospital, seeing it as an opportunity not only for business, but also for social transformation. The United States of 2025 was still grappling with deep social and racial inequalities. The healthcare system, though technologically advanced, remained inaccessible to a large part of the population. Marcus dreamed of changing this, starting with St. Elizabeth's. His vision was to create a care model that combined medical excellence and social responsibility. As Marcus waited to be seen, sitting in the chair where Sarah had guided him, his mind was working quickly. The humiliation he had suffered only reinforced his conviction that drastic changes were necessary. He keenly observed the interactions between patients and staff, noting the subtle but obvious disparities in treatment. Dr. Thompson, meanwhile, continued on his way through the hospital corridors, unaware of the earthquake his actions had triggered. To him, it was just another demonstration of his power and influence. He was far from suspecting that his reign was about to be shaken to its foundations. Sarah, returning with a doctor to attend to Marcus, couldn't shake the scene she had witnessed from her mind. She knew such incidents were not uncommon, but something in Marcus's silent dignity had deeply touched her. Without knowing it, she was about to become a key element in the transformation that was coming. The hospital pulsed with its usual activity. Operations were being performed, diagnoses made, lives saved. But beneath the surface, currents of change were beginning to form. Marcus's presence, though momentarily discreet, was like a stone thrown into a calm lake. The circles of his influence would extend far beyond this initial moment. As the day progressed, rumors about the incident in the lobby began to circulate among the staff. Some defended Dr. Thompson, arguing that he was merely maintaining the hospital's standards. Others, like Sarah, felt that a line had been crossed. The silent debate that was forming was a microcosm of the social tensions that permeated American society as a whole. Marcus, now being examined by a young doctor, visibly more empathetic than Dr. Thompson, was contemplating the next steps. The acquisition of the hospital, which was previously just a strategic move, was now taking on the contours of a personal mission. He was determined to transform St. Elizabeth's not only into a center of medical excellence, but into a beacon of equality and social justice. The stage was set for a collision of worlds, values, and visions of the future. St. Elizabeth's Hospital, for so long a symbol of the status quo, was about to become the theater of a silent but profound revolution. And at the center of this brewing storm were Marcus, Dr. Thompson, and Sarah, three individuals whose destinies were about to intertwine in a way none of them could have foreseen. In the days following the incident in the lobby, a palpable tension hung over St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Dr. Thompson's behavior, once tolerated as the eccentricity of a brilliant doctor, was now the subject of animated discussions in corridors and break rooms. Marcus Johnson, recovered from his initial scare, intensified his efforts to finalize the hospital's acquisition. Working behind the scenes, he met with board members, presenting his vision of a hospital that combined medical excellence with social responsibility. His proposal was bold: transform St. Elizabeth's into a model of inclusive healthcare without compromising the quality that had made it famous. Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson, oblivious to the changes looming on the horizon, continued his usual routine. His arrogance, however, seemed to have reached new heights. Irritated by rumors about the incident, he treated patients and staff he considered inferior with even more disdain. On a particularly tense morning, Dr. Thompson came into direct conflict with Sarah. The young nurse, encouraged by the silent support of her colleagues, confronted him about his discriminatory treatment of an elderly patient from a modest background. The doctor, furious at what he saw as insubordination, threatened to use his influence to have Sarah fired. "Who do you think you are to question my methods?" Dr. Thompson bellowed, his face red with anger. "I built this hospital's reputation. You're all replaceable." Sarah, trembling but determined, replied, "You may have surgical skills, Dr. Thompson, but a hospital is much more than that. It's about caring for people, all people." The altercation drew the attention of other staff members and even some patients. Sarah's words seemed to have given voice to a long-repressed sentiment among the team. That same afternoon, Marcus received an urgent call from one of his contacts on the hospital's board of directors. The incident between Dr. Thompson and Sarah had reached the ears of management, and an emergency meeting had been called to discuss the surgeon's future at St. Elizabeth's. Marcus saw this as the perfect opportunity to accelerate his plans. With a mix of entrepreneurial strategy and passion for social change, he prepared a presentation that not only addressed the specific incident, but also proposed a complete overhaul of the hospital's culture. On the morning of the meeting, St. Elizabeth's board of directors was divided. Some members, concerned about the institution's reputation, advocated for Dr. Thompson's immediate dismissal. Others, fearing the loss of one of their most renowned doctors, argued for a mere warning. It was in this climate of indecision that Marcus Johnson made his entrance. Dressed in an impeccable suit, he exuded a confidence that immediately captured everyone's attention in the room. With eloquence, he began to outline his vision for St. Elizabeth's future. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice firm and passionate, "we are at a crossroads. We can continue on the path that has led us here, a path of excellence certainly, but also of exclusion. Or we can take a courageous step towards a future where excellence and equality go hand in hand." As Marcus presented his plan, which included diversity training programs for staff, expanding care to disadvantaged communities, and investments in research focused on the specific needs of diverse populations, the board moved from initial surprise to genuine interest. "But who are you to propose such changes?" asked one of the more conservative board members. With a serene smile, Marcus revealed, "I am the new majority owner of St. Elizabeth's Hospital. The papers were finalized this morning." A stunned silence gripped the room. Marcus continued, "My experience here, a few weeks ago, as a patient treated with contempt, only strengthened my conviction that changes are necessary and urgent." As the board absorbed the news outside the meeting room, Dr. Thompson walked confidently through the corridors, certain that his status at the hospital was secure. Sarah, meanwhile, anxiously waited at her post, fearing the consequences of her confrontation with the powerful surgeon. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was about to enter a new era. The decisions made in this boardroom would not only determine the fate of Dr. Thompson and Sarah, but also the future of one of the country's most prestigious medical institutions. As the meeting dragged on, the tension in the hospital was palpable. Employees exchanged worried glances. Patients sensed the charged atmosphere. Everyone knew that something significant was happening, something that could change St. Elizabeth's forever. Marcus Johnson, now revealed as the new owner, was preparing to face not only Dr. Thompson, but an entire entrenched system of privilege and discrimination. The battle ahead promised to shake the hospital's structures to their very foundations. As the board meeting unfolded, several subplots began to develop in the corridors of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, adding layers of complexity to an already tense situation. Dr. Lisa Chen, a respected cardiac surgeon and one of Dr. Thompson's few allies, found herself facing an ethical dilemma. On one hand, she owed much of her career to Thompson's support. On the other, recent events had opened her eyes to her mentor's toxic behavior. In her office, she reread the Hippocratic Oath, pondering the true meaning of being a doctor. Simultaneously, in the nursing department, Sarah faced ostracism from some more conservative colleagues who saw her as a threat to the status quo. However, a growing group of young professionals viewed her as a hero, inspired by her courage to challenge the system. This division created a tense work environment, with whispers and furtive glances filling the moments between patient care. In the accounting department, Mike Foster, a middle-aged accountant, was struggling with his conscience. For years, he had been helping Dr. Thompson doctor financial reports, concealing questionable billing practices. With changes in the air, Mike feared his actions would be discovered, jeopardizing not only his career, but also his family's future. Amidst all this, an elderly patient, Mrs. Rodriguez, a Cuban immigrant, anxiously awaited vital heart surgery. Her granddaughter Elena, a medical student, watched with concern as chaos unfolded in the hospital. She knew her grandmother's operation depended on the stability of the medical team, currently in turmoil. In the hospital parking lot, security guard James, a middle-aged black man, reflected on recent events. He had witnessed the treatment Marcus received and deeply identified with the situation. James began to wonder how many times he had been a silent accomplice to discriminatory acts just to keep his job. In the cafeteria, a group of interns animatedly discussed rumors about the imminent changes. Some viewed the possibility of a more inclusive work environment with enthusiasm, while others feared that the hospital's exclusive reputation would be compromised, affecting their future careers. Dr. Emily Patel, head of the pediatrics department and one of the few women in leadership positions at the hospital, observed the events unfolding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. She had long been fighting for more diversity in the medical team, and now saw a real opportunity for change. However, she feared that a poorly managed transition could cause more harm than good. In the research lab, Dr. Alejandro Ramirez, a brilliant researcher from Mexico, worked tirelessly on a groundbreaking study on neglected tropical diseases. He saw in the possible change of hospital leadership a chance to finally get more resources for research focused on the needs of underserved populations. Meanwhile, in the emergency room waiting area, lives continued to hang in the balance. A young mother cradled her feverish child, a businessman clutched his chest in pain, a teenager anxiously awaited test results. For them, the hospital's internal politics were irrelevant. What mattered was the care they would receive. All these stories intertwined, creating a complex tapestry of emotions, ethics, and expectations. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was not just a building of concrete and glass, but a pulsing organism where every decision had the power to affect countless lives. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hospital corridors, tension reached its peak. The board meeting was about to end, and its decisions would reverberate throughout the hospital, affecting each of these subplots in unpredictable ways. Marcus Johnson, aware of the weight of his actions, prepared to face not only Dr. Thompson, but an entire entrenched system. He knew that the true battle was just beginning. The changes he proposed would not be easy to implement, and resistance would be fierce. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was on the brink of a revolution. Every person within its walls, from the most renowned doctor to the humblest employee, would be affected. The question hanging in the air was, would the hospital emerge from this storm stronger and more just, or would it succumb to the pressures of change? The silence that followed the end of the board meeting was deafening. Marcus Johnson emerged from the boardroom, his face a mask of determination. Behind him, board members filed out with expressions ranging from surprise to shock, some even with a glimmer of hope in their eyes. At that moment, Dr. Thompson rounded the corner, walking with his usual arrogance. Upon seeing Marcus, he stopped abruptly, recognizing him as the patient he had humiliated weeks earlier. Before he could fully process the situation, Marcus approached, extending his hand. "Dr. Thompson, I believe we haven't been properly introduced. Marcus Johnson, new majority owner of St. Elizabeth's Hospital." The shock on Dr. Thompson's face was palpable. His mouth opened and closed several times, emitting no sound. For the first time in his career, he found himself speechless. Marcus continued, his voice calm but firm. "I'd like to invite you to a conversation in my office, immediately." As the two men headed towards the office, the buzz spread through the hospital like wildfire. Staff, patients, and visitors watched the scene unfold, incredulous. In the office, Marcus got straight to the point. "Dr. Thompson, your medical competence is undeniable, but your behavior is unacceptable. St. Elizabeth's Hospital is about to undergo significant changes, and you have a choice to make." Dr. Thompson, regaining his composure, attempted to counterattack. "You can't just come in here and—" Marcus interrupted. "I can, and I will. This hospital will no longer be a playground for inflated egos and archaic prejudices. You have two options: adapt to the changes or leave." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Sarah, the nurse, accompanied by Mrs. Rodriguez and her granddaughter Elena. "Excuse the intrusion," said Sarah, "but we have an emergency. Mrs. Rodriguez needs immediate surgery, and Dr. Thompson is the only available surgeon right now." Dr. Thompson looked at the elderly patient, then at Marcus, and finally at Sarah. His world was crumbling around him, but here was a chance for redemption, or to dig his hole even deeper. With a deep sigh, Dr. Thompson made his decision. "I'll perform the operation. Prepare the operating room." As Dr. Thompson rushed out with Sarah and the patients, Marcus found himself alone in the office, reflecting on the weight of his actions and the changes to come. Hours passed. The entire hospital seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the outcome of the operation. It wasn't just Mrs. Rodriguez's life at stake, but also the future of St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Finally, the doors to the operating room opened. Dr. Thompson emerged, exhausted, but with a different gleam in his eyes. "The operation was a success," he announced to everyone's relief. Elena, tears in her eyes, hugged the doctor. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for saving my grandmother." It was at this moment that something changed in Dr. Thompson. The sincere embrace of gratitude from a young Latina woman whom he would likely have ignored a few days ago touched something deep within him. Marcus, who was observing the scene, approached. "Dr. Thompson, I think we have a lot to discuss." In the days that followed, St. Elizabeth's Hospital entered a phase of intense transformation. Marcus Johnson implemented a series of radical changes: mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff, extension of care to disadvantaged communities with the creation of a wing dedicated to free treatments, partnerships with public universities to offer internships to medical students from diverse backgrounds, creation of an ethics committee with real power to investigate and sanction cases of discrimination. Surprisingly, Dr. Thompson, after his transformative experience, became one of the biggest advocates for these changes. His journey of redemption inspired other staff members to re-examine their own attitudes and prejudices. Sarah was promoted to head nurse, bringing a new perspective to the hospital's leadership. Dr. Ramirez saw his tropical disease research project gain visibility and funding. Accountant Mike Foster, inspired by the new atmosphere of integrity, confessed his past actions and offered to help with the hospital's financial restructuring. As the changes solidified, St. Elizabeth's Hospital began to attract national and international attention. It became a model of how traditional institutions could reinvent themselves to meet the needs of a diverse and ever-evolving society. Marcus Johnson, observing the transformation he had initiated, knew that the road ahead would still be long and difficult. But seeing patients of all backgrounds treated with dignity, staff working with a renewed sense of purpose, and an atmosphere of mutual respect permeating the corridors, he knew that every obstacle would be worth it. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was no longer just a symbol of status and medical excellence. It had become a beacon of hope, showing that change was possible, even in the most unlikely environments. The changes implemented by Marcus Johnson at St. Elizabeth's Hospital sent shockwaves through the entire American healthcare system. In the months that followed, the consequences of these transformations began to manifest in both expected and surprising ways. News of St. Elizabeth's transformation spread rapidly, attracting the attention of national and international media. Journalists flocked to the hospital's reception, eager to interview Marcus, Dr. Thompson, and other staff members about this revolutionary paradigm shift in the institution. The Department of Health and Human Services, initially skeptical, sent a team to evaluate the changes. They were impressed by the preliminary results: rising patient satisfaction rates, improved treatment outcomes, and a notable reduction in discrimination complaints. However, not all reactions were positive. Some competing hospitals, fearing the loss of their elite clientele, launched aggressive marketing campaigns emphasizing their exclusive care. This generated a lively debate in society about the role of private hospitals in the healthcare system. Within St. Elizabeth's, reactions were also mixed. Many employees embraced the changes with enthusiasm, feeling energized by the institution's new mission. Others, particularly those who had benefited from the old system, silently resisted, creating small pockets of tension. Dr. Thompson, in his journey of redemption, faced his own challenges. Some colleagues viewed him as a traitor to the old guard, while others, inspired by his transformation, sought his advice. He constantly found himself having to prove his sincerity, both to himself and to others. Sarah, now in a leadership position, discovered that management was much more complex than she had imagined. She struggled to balance her team's needs with the hospital's new policies, often working late into the night to resolve conflicts and implement changes. The extension of care to disadvantaged communities brought new logistical and medical challenges. The hospital saw a significant increase in patients with neglected diseases and advanced conditions that had remained untreated for years. This required rapid adaptation of medical teams and the creation of new care protocols. The diversity program met initial resistance from some more conservative staff members. However, as the benefits became evident, such as better communication with patients from diverse backgrounds and a more harmonious work environment, even the skeptics began to change their minds. The partnership with public universities brought new energy to the hospital. Young interns from diverse backgrounds brought fresh perspectives and challenged established practices, stimulating innovation in several departments. Financially, the hospital went through ups and downs. Initially, there was a drop in revenue, as some elite patients migrated to other facilities. However, this was gradually offset by the increase in care volume and new contracts with the public health system, interested in replicating St. Elizabeth's model. Mrs. Rodriguez's story became a symbol of the hospital's transformation. Her successful recovery, closely followed by her granddaughter Eleanor, was documented and shared as a case study at medical conferences, illustrating the positive impact of truly inclusive care. Marcus Johnson, while satisfied with the progress, faced constant pressures. Investors questioned the financial viability of the new model, while social activists demanded even more radical changes. He found himself in the difficult position of having to balance ideals with practical realities. Accountant Mike Foster, after confessing his past actions, became a key element in the hospital's financial restructuring. His inside knowledge of old practices helped create more transparent and ethical systems, though he still struggled with guilt over his previous actions. As the first year of St. Elizabeth's new era approached its end, it was clear that the transformation was far from over. Each victory brought new challenges. Each solution revealed previously hidden problems. However, there was a general sense that something truly significant was happening within these walls. St. Elizabeth's Hospital had become more than a medical institution. It was now a living laboratory of social change, an example of how to tackle systemic inequalities head-on. The lessons learned here were beginning to spread, inspiring changes in other institutions across the country. For Marcus, Dr. Thompson, Sarah, and everyone involved, it was clear that the journey was just beginning. The real test would be maintaining the momentum of change in the face of the inevitable obstacles that still lay ahead. 1 year after the beginning of the transformations at St. Elizabeth's Hospital, Marcus Johnson called a general meeting with all staff. The auditorium was packed, a sea of expectant faces, some anxious, others curious, reflecting the diversity that now characterized the institution. Marcus took the stage, his expression serious but determined. "A year ago," he began, "we embarked together on an ambitious journey. We faced challenges that many deemed insurmountable. Today, we're here not to celebrate victory, but to acknowledge our progress and confront the obstacles that still lie ahead." He then shared the results of the first year, a 30% increase in the number of patients treated, a significant improvement in satisfaction scores, and a notable reduction in discrimination complaints. However, there were also challenges. Financial pressure was real, and resistance to some changes persisted in certain sectors. "But our greatest challenge," Marcus continued, "is not to rest on our laurels. We can't afford to think the work is done." It was at this moment that Dr. Thompson, seated in the front row, unexpectedly stood up. "With your permission, Marcus, I'd like to say a few words." Marcus, surprised, nodded. Dr. Thompson took the stage, his posture very different from the arrogance that had once characterized him. "A year ago, I was part of the problem," he began, his voice charged with emotion. "Today, I stand before you not as a redeemed man, but as someone in a constant process of learning and growth." He then shared how the experience with Mrs. Rodriguez had been just the beginning of his transformation. In the months that followed, he had devoted himself to treating patients in underprivileged communities, facing realities he had previously ignored. "Each patient has taught me more about humanity and empathy than all my years of study," he confessed. Dr. Thompson then announced that he was creating a mentorship program for young doctors from diverse backgrounds, using his own resources to fund scholarships. "This is my way of trying to correct years of injustice," he explained. The audience, initially skeptical, now listened in respectful silence. Many who had previously seen Dr. Thompson as a symbol of the old system now saw him in a new light. Sarah, now head nurse, was the next to speak. She shared the challenges of leading in a constantly evolving environment. "I've learned that leadership isn't about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions and truly listening," she reflected. She announced the creation of a diverse nursing council, giving a voice to professionals from all backgrounds in hospital decisions. "Our strength lies in our diversity," she affirmed. As other staff members shared their experiences, a pattern emerged. Each challenge overcome had paved the way for new learnings and personal growth. Dr. Ramirez, whose research project on neglected tropical diseases had gained international recognition, spoke about how the hospital's new approach was changing lives beyond its walls. "We're treating diseases that many had forgotten, and in doing so, we're redefining what it means to be a hospital of excellence," he stated. Elena, Mrs. Rodriguez's granddaughter, now an intern at St. Elizabeth's, shared how her grandmother's experience had inspired an entire community. "People who once feared hospitals now see St. Elizabeth's as a place of hope," she said, moved. Mike Foster, the accountant, spoke about the creation of a new, transparent financial system that balanced economic sustainability with social responsibility. "We've proven it's possible to be both ethical and efficient," he affirmed. As the meeting neared its end, Marcus took the stage again. "Each of you," he said, looking at the audience, "is part of this transformation. Every patient we treat with dignity, every prejudice we challenge, every life we touch is a step towards the hospital and society we want to build." He then launched a new challenge. In the next 6 months, each department should develop an innovative project combining medical excellence and social impact. "Let's show the world that St. Elizabeth's is not an exception, but a model to follow," he concluded. When the meeting ended, there was a palpable energy in the air. Employees who barely spoke to each other before were now animatedly discussing ideas. Experienced doctors sought the opinions of young interns. Nurses and administrative staff exchanged perspectives on improving processes. St. Elizabeth's Hospital was far from perfect. There were still resistances to overcome, systems to perfect, mindsets to change. But at that moment, it was clear to everyone present that they were on the right path. Marcus, observing the scene, felt a mixture of pride and humility. He knew that the real test was yet to come. The question now was, how to keep this spirit of innovation and inclusion alive? How to ensure that St. Elizabeth's continues to grow and evolve, not just as a hospital, but as an agent of social change. With these thoughts in mind, Marcus prepared for the next chapter of this transformative journey. St. Elizabeth's Hospital had proven that change was possible. Now it was time to prove that it could be sustainable. In the months following the general meeting, St. Elizabeth's Hospital entered a phase of intense activity and innovation. The challenge issued by Marcus Johnson had ignited a spark of creativity and determination throughout the team. However, as the hospital approached the 18-month mark since the beginning of the transformations, new challenges emerged, setting the stage for a decisive confrontation. The first sign of trouble came from the outside. A group of competing hospitals, led by influential businessman Robert Blackwell, launched an aggressive campaign against St. Elizabeth's new model. They claimed that the hospital was compromising quality of care by focusing on low-income patients and that the model was not financially viable. Internally, the hospital was fighting its own battles. Despite initial success, financial pressure began to intensify. The increase in free or low-cost care was weighing on the hospital's margins. Marcus and his team worked tirelessly to find A balance, but it was a constant struggle. Dr. Thompson, in his new position as director of the mentorship program, faced resistance from some colleagues who still viewed him with suspicion. His efforts to diversify the medical staff were creating tensions between the old guard and new interns. Sarah, as head nurse, was managing growing burnout among her team. The increase in patient volume and case complexity was pushing many to their limits. She struggled to implement wellness and psychological support policies, but resources were limited. Dr. Ramirez's tropical disease research project, initially celebrated, now faced budget cuts. The fight for funding became a daily battle, threatening the progress already made. Meanwhile, Elena, now a respected intern, began to notice troubling patterns. Some wealthy patients were still receiving veiled preferential treatment, a practice that went against everything the new St. Elizabeth stood for. She found herself facing the dilemma of whether or not to report these practices. Mike Foster discovered anomalies in the new financial records, suggesting that not everyone had completely abandoned the old, unethical practices. He knew that revealing this information could shake confidence in the hospital's leadership. Marcus Johnson, feeling the weight of all these pressures, called an emergency meeting with his core team. "We're at a critical point," he declared. "Everything we've built is in danger. We need solutions. And we need them now." It was at this moment that explosive news arrived. Robert Blackwell, the businessman leading the campaign against St. Elizabeth's, had made an offer to buy the hospital. The proposal, extremely generous, came with the promise to restore St. Elizabeth's to its former glory. The news spread like wildfire through the hospital, generating a wave of uncertainty and fear. Employees began to wonder if all the transformation effort had been in vain. Some even considered Blackwell's offer as a way out of the hospital's financial problems. Marcus knew he was facing the biggest crisis since he had taken control of St. Elizabeth's. Blackwell's offer was not just a threat to the hospital, but to the entire transformation movement they had initiated. With the deadline to respond to the offer approaching, Marcus gathered his core team: Dr. Thompson, Sarah, Dr. Ramirez, Elena, and Mike. "We have 48 hours," he said, "to find a solution that not only saves St. Elizabeth's, but reaffirms everything we stand for." The group settled into a conference room, determined not to leave until they had a plan. They knew that the next 48 hours would determine not only the future of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, but potentially the future of healthcare in America. Meanwhile, outside, journalists gathered at the hospital entrance. Patients anxiously awaited news, and Robert Blackwell waited confidently, certain that his offer would be irresistible. The stage was set for an epic confrontation. St. Elizabeth's Hospital, a symbol of change and hope, was about to face its greatest challenge. The question hanging in the air was, could Marcus and his team find a solution that would save not only the hospital, but everything it had become? The 48 hours that followed were the most intense in St. Elizabeth's Hospital's history. Marcus Johnson and his team worked tirelessly, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. The clock seemed to tick faster as they searched for a solution capable of saving everything they had fought for. On the first day, ideas flew around the room. Dr. Thompson suggested a fundraising campaign among influential former patients. Sarah proposed an operational optimization plan that could cut costs without compromising quality. Dr. Ramirez presented a bold proposal to transform part of the hospital into an international research center, thus attracting investments. Elena, with her unique perspective as an intern, reminded them of the importance of staying focused on patients. "We must not forget why we started all this," she reminded the group. Mike, analyzing the numbers, worked on financial models that could make the hospital viable in the long term. Each idea was debated, analyzed, and often rejected, only to be reconsidered in a new light hours later. As the second day progressed, exhaustion began to set in. It was then that Marcus, looking out the conference room window, saw something that would change everything. On the sidewalk in front of the hospital, a group of patients and community members had gathered. They carried signs, "Save St. Elizabeth's, our hospital, our hope." At that moment, Marcus had an epiphany. "We're approaching this the wrong way," he said, turning to the team. "This isn't just about numbers or strategies. It's about the people we serve, the community we've built." With renewed energy, the group began working on a bold plan. They would transform St. Elizabeth's into a healthcare cooperative, where the community, staff and doctors would be co-owners. This would not only solve the financial problem, but also ensure that the hospital remained true to its mission. In the final hours, the plan took shape. They structured a business model that combined financial viability and social impact. They included partnerships with universities for research, preventive health programs in the community, and an innovative payment system based on outcomes. With only minutes to spare, Marcus finalized the presentation. Exhausted but hopeful, they knew they had created something revolutionary. The day of the presentation arrived. The hospital auditorium was packed. Employees, patients, journalists, and of course Robert Blackwell and his associates. The tension was palpable. Marcus took the stage, his face showing signs of the battle of the past few days, but his eyes shining with determination. "Today," he began, "we're not just here to save a hospital. We're here to redefine what a hospital can be." He then presented the plan, detailing how the new model would not only save St. Elizabeth's, but transform it into a global example of community healthcare and medical innovation. As Marcus spoke, the atmosphere in the room changed. Initial skepticism gave way to curiosity, then enthusiasm. Even Blackwell's associates seemed impressed. When Marcus finished, a momentary silence gripped the auditorium, followed by an explosion of applause. Patients stood up, many with tears in their eyes. Employees exchanged looks of pride and relief. Robert Blackwell, visibly shaken, asked to speak. "Mr. Johnson," he said, his voice betraying a mixture of admiration and frustration, "I came here today hoping to buy a hospital, but what you're offering is priceless." In a surprising gesture, Blackwell announced that instead of buying the hospital, he would like to invest in the new model, thus becoming part of the cooperative. "If you can't beat them, join them," he said, drawing laughter from the audience. The moment of triumph was sealed when Mrs. Rodriguez, now recovered and in good health, took the stage with her granddaughter Elena. "This hospital gave me more than health," she said emotionally. "It gave me hope and dignity, and now it's giving that to an entire community." Marcus, surrounded by his team, looked at the audience. He saw faces of all colors, ages and backgrounds, united by a common purpose. At that moment, he knew they had accomplished something truly extraordinary. St. Elizabeth's Hospital had not only survived its greatest crisis, it had emerged stronger, more united, and with an even clearer purpose. What had begun as a struggle for survival had transformed into a revolution in healthcare. As the audience celebrated, Marcus exchanged glances with his team. They knew that the real work was just beginning. But now they had not only a hospital, but an entire community by their side. St. Elizabeth's had become more than a hospital. It was now a symbol of hope, a model of how determination, compassion, and innovation could transform not just an institution, but an entire society. In the months that followed the transformation of St. Elizabeth's Hospital into a healthcare cooperative, the changes exceeded even the most optimistic expectations. The new model had not only saved the hospital, but propelled it to the forefront of a revolution in the American healthcare system. Implementing the plan wasn't without challenges. The transition to a cooperative model required significant restructuring and a mindset shift from all involved parties. However, the spirit of unity and common purpose that had emerged during the crisis served as a solid foundation for overcoming obstacles. 1 year after Marcus's dramatic presentation, St. Elizabeth's Hospital had become an international case study in innovative healthcare management. Delegations from around the world visited the hospital to draw inspiration from its unique model. The impact on the local community was profound. The preventive health program, one of the cornerstones of the new model, significantly reduced rates of chronic diseases in the area. The partnership with universities not only stimulated research, but also attracted diverse talent, further enriching the hospital environment. Dr. Thompson, now fully committed to the mentorship program, saw his efforts bear fruit. A new generation of doctors, committed to ethics and inclusion, began to emerge, changing the face of medicine in America. Sarah, as a leader on the Nursing Council, implemented wellness programs that became a national benchmark. Burnout among staff decreased significantly, while job satisfaction reached record levels. Dr. Ramirez's research project on tropical diseases, now properly funded, made significant breakthroughs. His discoveries not only saved lives in America, but had a global impact, particularly in developing countries. Elena, who had grown up with the hospital's changes, became one of the most respected doctors in the institution. Her compassionate and innovative approach inspired both colleagues and patients. Robert Blackwell, the former rival, became one of the biggest advocates of St. Elizabeth's model. His support and resources helped replicate the model in other hospitals across the country. Marcus Johnson, looking back, could hardly believe the journey they had taken. The hospital that was once on the brink of collapse was now a beacon of hope and innovation. More importantly, it was a living testament that positive change was possible, even in the face of the most daunting challenges. The success of St. Elizabeth's had a domino effect on the American healthcare system. Politicians and health managers began rethinking policies and practices, inspired by what had been accomplished. However, Marcus and his team knew that the work would never truly be finished. Each success paved the way for new challenges. Each solution revealed new problems to solve. But now they faced the future not with fear, but with confidence and determination. St. Elizabeth's Hospital had become more than a healthcare institution. It was a symbol of transformation, a reminder that with vision, courage, and compassion, it was possible not just to dream of a better world, but to build it, one patient at a time. As the sun set on another day of groundbreaking care and innovation, Marcus Johnson stood at the hospital entrance, watching patients, staff, and visitors come and go. He smiled, knowing that while the journey ahead would be challenging, the path they had chosen was the right one. St. Elizabeth's was no longer just a hospital. It was a movement, a beacon of hope for healthcare reform across the nation and beyond. 5 years after the transformation of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, Marcus Johnson walked through the corridors, reflecting on the incredible journey they had accomplished. The hospital pulsed with life and determination. In the rooms, patients from all backgrounds received excellent care. In the laboratories, researchers made breakthroughs that would save lives. Worldwide, in the classrooms, a new generation of healthcare professionals learned to combine technical skill with compassion. Marcus smiled, knowing the work would never truly be finished. But now the future seemed filled with possibilities. St. Elizabeth's had become more than a hospital. It was a movement, living proof that change was possible. Dear viewer, you've reached the end of this incredible journey of transformation and hope. The story of St. Elizabeth's Hospital shows us that change is possible, no matter how big the challenges. Now we want to hear from you. If you've watched this far, leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end." Your opinion matters to us. What did you think of the story? Has it inspired you in any way? Don't forget to click on the video that appears on the final screen. You'll find more inspiring stories there that will move you and make you think. Together, we can make a difference. See you next time.